Hello, and this is now a monthly, reminder that I am not an AI voice. I'm a real person who's reading real stories about some really unexplainable glitch in the Matrix events. If you're into that, click subscribe and follow. Alright, so check this out. Did my husband's sock just become a hat? My husband has weird things like this happen to him all the time, but my absolute favorite is the time that his sock turned into a hat. Yeah, you heard that right. A few years ago, he lost one of his red and black striped socks. At first, we just assumed that it had fallen behind the dresser, or that it had been eaten by the mysterious void that consumes missing socks that every household has. After months of searching, we finally gave up. It was gone. Then, out of nowhere, a red and black striped hat appeared in his wardrobe. He'd never seen it before, and he'd never bought a hat like this before either. And when he asked around, no one, not me, nor friends, nor any family, had any idea where this black and red striped hat came from. It was in the exact same pattern as the missing sock, though. Same colors, same stripes, just a different object entirely now. So what happened? Did the sock transform into a hat? Did we slip into a slightly different reality where, instead of losing a sock, he gained a hat? Or is the universe just playing weird little games with us? Either way, it remains one of the strangest and funniest glitches I can recall. Somebody in the comments says, "Hey, I need more examples of weird things happening to your husband." OP responds with, "Alright, here's another good one. My husband loves hunting for fossils and arrowheads. He found his first fully intact Native American artifact a couple of years ago. A small scraping tool made from chipped flint, and was super pumped to have finally got one after months of searching. He showed it off to everyone who would listen, and after taking it to work to show some of his coworkers, it just vanished. He thought he must have left it on top of his truck and then drove off with it because after searching the office and the parking lot, it was nowhere to be found. When he told me he'd lost it, I helped him tear the house apart looking for it. We keep our favorite fossils and flint pieces in a small display tray, which is where he normally kept it, and it wasn't there. It wasn't under any furniture. It was just seemingly gone. Eventually, he gave up and hoped that he'd find another one someday soon. Fast forward a year and a half or so, and I was looking in the display tray, and there it was. It just reappeared. I know, from an outside perspective, it's easy to write off, but I also know with absolute certainty that it was not there before. He and I both combed over that tray multiple times. For whatever reason, I guess it just found its way back, and we still have it to this day. A stranger had my tattoo, my past, and my fate. I was responding to a post on another Reddit sub when I realized that this might be worth sharing here with you all. About 15 years ago, I went through a terrible breakup, and on impulse, I got a tattoo on my foot that said, Alice Wolat Propris. It means she flies with her own wings. At the time, I was living in Ohio, and I had never considered moving to Oregon. It wasn't even on my radar. Yet, years later, I found myself randomly, unexpectedly moving there. One night, I was on a date, and we started discussing tattoos. The guy that I was with looked at mine and said, "You know, that's actually Oregon's state motto, right? She flies with her own wings?" And that moment just felt serendipitous. But the real shocker came 2 years later. I was in San Francisco celebrating my birthday with my boyfriend and daughter, and we were standing at the top of Lombard Hill next to a group of girls. I looked down, either at my feet or the road, I guess I don't remember exactly, and that's when I saw it. One of the girls had the exact same tattoo. Same phrase, same spot on her foot, same font and size. I got excited and I had to comment on it, and one of her friends turned to her and said, "Oh my God, you have to tell her the story." And that's when I nearly fell over. She had the exact same story as me. Bad breakup. Moved to Oregon from Ohio. Never planned on living there. Only found out after moving that her tattoo was the state motto. She even joked that once she learned it was the motto, she knew that she was meant to be there. Sound familiar? Looking back, I'm almost certain that this was a glitch in the Matrix. Maybe she was me from another timeline, because, honestly, the odds of this happening just felt too impossible to be real. I had witnesses with me when this happened. I wish I had exchanged contact information with her, because even a decade later, I can't stop thinking about it. Who was whistling in my kitchen? This happened about 12 years ago when I was 17 and babysitting my little sister, who was around 7 or 8 at the time. She doesn't remember much of it, but I do. Mainly because I can't explain it. It's one of those experiences that just doesn't make sense, and for someone as skeptical as me, it's deeply unsettling. It was summer vacation. My parents were at work, and I was home alone with my little sister. We lived on the second floor of an old Chicago townhouse, which had a back porch leading straight into the kitchen. That afternoon, we were both in the living room, me watching TV, her playing some computer game. And she got frustrated. She blurted out this cuss word, and since my parents had a strict rule about swearing, I sent her to the kitchen for a 5-minute timeout. I completely lost track of time. By the time my show ended, over 40 minutes had passed. I felt horrible, and I rushed to the kitchen to let her out, but just as I got close, I froze in place. I heard whistling. At first, I thought my sister had taught herself to whistle while waiting, which honestly made me feel even worse for leaving her in there for so long. But the longer I listened, the more unsettling it became. It wasn't random whistling. It was a tune. It didn't sound young, it actually sounded older, and then I realized it sounded exactly like my dad. My dad always whistled when he came home from work, and this was his exact whistle. Same rhythm, same pitch, the way the notes lingered just a little too long, but he wasn't supposed to be home for another 4 hours. Annoyed, I started walking slower, expecting to see my dad standing there, but when I peeked inside, I didn't see him. I saw my sister completely knocked out, fast asleep. Her head was resting on her arms. She had not been whistling. But the whistling hadn't stopped yet. It was still there, still filling the kitchen. I stood there, frozen, trying to understand what was happening. It wasn't coming from my sister. It didn't sound like it was coming from outside, and it wasn't coming from anywhere that I could see. I bolted. I ran to the back door. I flung it open, and no one was there. I ran to the windows, checking outside, down the alley, around the porch. Nothing. But the whistling? I could still hear it in the kitchen. At that point, I just panicked. I grabbed my sister, barely waking her up, and ran straight to my friend's house down the street. I stayed there until my mom got home. When I told her what happened, she brushed it off like it was nothing. She didn't even seem fazed, and that freaked me out even more. A few days later, my dad finally came home from work through the back door, as usual, and as he walked inside, he started whistling. It was the exact same tune that I had heard in the kitchen that day, the exact one. I've tried to explain it away, and I've thought about every logical possibility, but nothing fits. I never told my dad. I never told my sister. Never spoke about it again to anybody. Until now. But I still think about this all the time. How did I know she was waiting for me? I've been a long-time lurker on this sub, but this is my first time posting. So please forgive any grammatical mistakes, as English is not my first language. I'm a philosophy teacher living in Mexico City, half Mexican and half Italian, which will be relevant later. I don't drink, I don't use drugs, and I have no history of mental illness. Back in 2017, I lived alone in the same apartment that I do now, happy with my books and my 2 cats, a tuxedo cat named Gordita and a big Siamese named Ronnie. One sunny April morning, I was at work when a strike at the university cut my day short. Some colleagues invited me out for coffee to discuss the situation, but I declined. I couldn't explain why, but I felt an overwhelming, urgent need to go home. It wasn't just a passing thought, it was almost like a physical pull, like this gut feeling that was so strong it unsettled me. I had only ever felt something like this 2 or 3 times in my life. When I arrived home, still shaken by the intensity of the feeling, I pulled out my keys and I opened the door, only to find a tiny calico kitten sitting in my hallway. She was small, malnourished, and had a swollen ear. I knelt down immediately. "Hey, sweetie, who are you? Are you hurt?" I asked softly. Then, in the blink of an eye, she bolted right past me, straight into my apartment. I followed her into the living room, where she paused, turned, and locked eyes with me. And that's when it happened. I didn't hear it with my ears, but I heard it inside my head as a clear thought. I heard a voice. It wasn't my own inner monologue. It was something else. In a strange mix of broken Spanish and broken Italian, the message came through, "This my house. You, my mom." My stomach dropped. I felt dizzy, like I had just stepped into another reality. I knew what my own thoughts sounded like, and this was not mine. It was hers. I stood there, stunned, as the kitten casually walked over to the window, curled up in the sunlight, and closed her eyes as if she had always belonged there. My other 2 cats came over, looking at her with this wide-eyed confusion. Gordita seemed curious, while Ronnie stared like he had just seen a ghost. 2 hours later, I finally collected myself and went out to buy some kitten food and a bed for her. On my way, I ran into my neighbor, who told me that she had seen the kitten sniffing around my door all morning, as if she was trying to get inside, to get back home. That was 8 years ago. I've named this cat Padocha, and she's been in my shadow ever since. We share an unbreakable bond. She follows me everywhere. And though I've never heard her voice again, I feel like we can communicate in ways beyond words. Sometimes I even believe she visits me in my dreams, as if she astral projects there herself. I still wonder, what would have happened if I hadn't gone home early that day? Did I sense her presence before I even saw her? Has anything like this ever happened to you with your pets? Did we just glitch into a different kitchen? A few days ago, my wife and I woke up, came downstairs for breakfast and opened the silverware drawer, only to be met with something that made both of us stop in our tracks. All of our spoons had changed. For years, we've had the same 8 normal tablespoons. We originally bought 2 different 4-piece cutlery sets, and since it's just the 2 of us in the house, we only ever needed to use a couple at a time. But that morning, instead of our familiar tablespoons, the drawer was filled with 8 identical soup spoons. And we don't own any soup spoons. Never have. And yet, there they were, perfectly arranged where our tablespoons should have been. At first, I thought that maybe my wife was pranking me, but that theory quickly fell apart for 2 reasons. She has pretty much no sense of humor when it comes to things like this, and she was just as confused, if not frustrated, about the missing normal spoons. We have no explanation here. No one had been in our house overnight. There were no signs of anything being moved or tampered with. But still, somehow, every single one of our normal tablespoons vanished, replaced by something that we had never owned. Where did our spoons go? And where did these spoons come from? I know, it's just cutlery, but the sheer impossibility of it is driving us both crazy. How did an item that we searched for everywhere reappear in an impossible place? This happened in 2021 in a house that I share with 4 friends. A lot of strange things used to happen there, but this one still baffles me. One day, we decided to bake a pie. We grabbed our pan with a removable bottom, or at least we tried to, because the bottom piece was now missing. We searched everywhere in the kitchen. We even checked our other rooms, and we also looked in the laundry room, but it was nowhere to be found. Eventually, we gave up. The bottom was just gone. Fast forward a few months, we were in the kitchen, just chatting, and one of my friends was washing the dishes. She cleaned a large baking tray, she dried it with a towel, and she placed it on top of the fridge, stacking it up on the other trays. And then, something moved. We all saw it, but it was so fast that we barely caught a glimpse. My friend instinctively grabbed the tray that she had just placed on the fridge, and inside it was the missing pie pan bottom. It was covered in dust, like it had been sitting somewhere dirty and forgotten, but we had never put it on top of the fridge, and we searched the entire house for it months earlier. None of us could explain what just happened. It wasn't the first time something weird happened there either. We used to joke that elves or fairies were playing tricks on us, but now, I honestly wonder, did it disappear into another dimension and just snap back? Did we witness an object shifting through reality? Or was it something else entirely? Even now, we still don't have an answer. A police stop, a disappearing highway, and a herd of buffalo. Has anyone else experienced this? Because I still can't explain what happened. A good many years ago, my friend and I were driving to her parents' house for Thanksgiving dinner. We left from Indiana and were headed to Michigan. It's a several-hour drive, and we were more than halfway there. Everything was normal until it wasn't. We were cruising down a quiet stretch of highway, and then the road disappeared. No pavement, no painted lines, no paths at all. Instead, we were suddenly in a wide open field with tall grass, trees, and buffalo. A herd of them, staring directly at us, and then they stampeded. My friend, B, was gripping the wheel in panic. "What do I do?" she screamed. What was I supposed to say? I don't navigate interdimensional buffalo crossings for a living, so I yelled back, "Try to stay where the road was." Somehow, that made sense to me at the time. She did, admittedly, a fantastic job maneuvering through Buffalo Land. I have no idea how long we were in there, but just as suddenly as it began, the road reappeared. We were back. Before we could process what the hell just happened, a police siren blared behind us. A cop had pulled us over. How exactly do you explain to an officer, "Sorry, we were swerving because we drove through an invisible buffalo dimension"? Yeah, that's not happening. B simply said she was tired, and luckily, the cop let us off with a warning. We've driven that same stretch of road many times since then, and there's been no glitches. There's no open fields, and we haven't seen a single buffalo since that day. But, even still, I have no idea what happened. Was it a glitch in reality? Did we shift dimensions for just a moment? Or did we have the weirdest highway hallucination in history? I have no clue, but I know that I'll never forget it. I think this is the weirdest sock glitch ever. Okay, so here's what happened. I did my laundry like normal, and when I went to fold my clothes, I realized that one sock was missing. I only had one of my Oscar the Grouch socks. No big deal. I figured the other one would turn up eventually. In the meantime, I set the lone sock on a shelf in my room and forgot about it. A couple of days later, my alarm went off in the morning. Now, my sock drawer is in my nightstand right next to my bed. The first thing I do every morning, before even getting out of bed, is reach into that drawer, grab a pair of socks, and put them on while still under the covers. I sleep in an ice-cold room, so socks are a must before facing the day. Still half asleep, I reach into the drawer in the dark, I grab a pair, and I put them on. Then I get up, I head to the kitchen, and while pouring my coffee, I glance down. It's my Oscar the Grouch socks. My first thought? Oh, someone must have found the missing one and just mated it for me. But something nagged at me. I went back to my room, looked at my nightstand, and there it was. One Oscar the Grouch sock still sitting on top where I left it a couple of days ago. I checked my feet, and I was still wearing a fully matched pair. Somehow, a second copy of my missing sock appeared in my drawer overnight. Where did it come from? I have no idea, but now I have 3 identical Oscar socks when I should only have 2. The Phantom Crunch, when 2 people hear and feel the impossible. Yesterday, I was talking with my colleague about a piece of paperwork. We were standing close to each other when she took a step toward her desk. At that exact moment, we both heard an audible crunch, the unmistakable sound of stepping on a Cheeto puff. Since I happened to be looking down at her feet, I actually saw her foot hesitate mid-step, almost like it was being impeded by something. It moved more slowly than usual, as though she was crushing something beneath it, but when she lifted her foot to check, nothing. The floor was completely clean. Nothing stuck to the bottom of her shoe. No crumbs, no debris. Absolutely nothing that could have made that crunch sound. We stared at each other in shock before nervously laughing it off, joking that we must be losing our minds. But here's the weird part. She swore she didn't just hear the crunch, she said she actually felt it under her shoe. And then today, I got a call from a friend. While we were catching up, I casually mentioned what happened. She eventually tells me that the exact same thing happened to her and one of her friends just yesterday. Same sound, same reaction, same eerie absence of anything that could explain it. I have no idea what to make of this, so I'm open to any and all theories. How is this possible? I drove down a road that shouldn't exist. I've been house sitting for the past week, and this morning I drove to work as usual. I know this route like the back of my hand. It's all back roads, but I never need Google Maps to get there. It was 5:43 a.m. when I left, and since I run a pet sitting business, I don't have to get fully ready in the mornings. I just throw on clothes and I go. So, while I was still mentally waking up, I was alert enough to know my way. I turned onto the first side street off the main road. This street is exactly 1 mile long. It was dark, so I made sure to double-check the street sign, and it was the correct road. I kept driving, but something felt wrong. After a while, I started thinking, there should be houses by now. I've definitely driven further than a mile. The road was still woods on both sides, and I wasn't seeing any familiar landmarks. Then, I noticed a car behind me in my rearview mirror, so I pulled over and decided to check Google Maps. That's when things got weird. Maps told me I was already on the next road, the one that I should have turned onto after this first side street. It even told me to turn left up ahead, but that wasn't right. I was expecting a right turn, like always. Confused, I got back on the road, still convinced that I must have just been disoriented in the early morning haze. But when I reached an intersection, I knew exactly where I was. An obvious landmark and street sign confirmed it, except I never turned off that first street. That road is just woods for an entire mile before houses appear near the end. But those houses never appeared. Instead, I somehow skipped straight ahead to the next road, miles further than I should have been. Logically, I know it was early morning and I've zoned out while driving before, but usually when I do that, I miss turns, not skip entire roads and land exactly where I need to be. I checked the time when I got to my client's house. I was only 2 to 3 minutes late, which made sense since I had pulled over to check maps. No missing time, no extra miles. I don't know what happened, but I know one thing is for sure. I never turned off that road. I was looking for my turn the whole time, and it just never came. Did I just watch somebody teleport? I had to stop and write this because something strange happened to me at the grocery store this morning. Not once, but twice. The first glitch happened when I passed an employee walking towards the front of the store while I was heading toward the back. She was moving slowly, and we passed each other about halfway down the aisle. I kept walking and exited the aisle, only to see her coming out from the back. That didn't make any sense. She should have still been walking toward the front, not suddenly appearing behind me. I brushed it off, finished shopping, and then I went to self-checkout. And that's when the second glitch happened. As I was leaving the checkout area, I noticed a girl who looked strange just starting to scan her items at one of the self-checkouts behind me. I continued walking toward the exit, heading down the front aisle of the store, and then, somehow, that same girl was already outside. She was way ahead of me, exiting the store before I even made it to the door. I've experienced time glitches before, but never like this. Never this obvious. I've spent the entire day trying to rationalize it, but I can't come up with a logical explanation. I'm sharing this here with you in case anyone that may hears this or reads this noticed anything strange today. Maybe I wasn't the only one who felt like reality skipped a beat. One second, my dog was there, then the next, he was locked in an impossible place. I was sitting in the living room of my small condo with my little dog, Dave. He's a 20-pound red mutt, probably a min pin Chihuahua Terrier mix. He's always by my side. But that night, something unexplainable happened. The oven timer went off and Dave followed me into the kitchen as I took out my food to cool. He lingered, sniffing the air, totally focused on the smell. I went back to the living room, but Dave stayed in the kitchen. I could hear his little paw nails clicking on the wood floor as he moved around, and then silence. A minute or two passed and I realized that I couldn't hear him anymore. I called out, "Davey, Davey," but no response. That's not totally unusual, but something did feel off. I got up to look for him. He wasn't in the kitchen, he wasn't near the front door, or in the dining area. There was literally nowhere else that he could be. My condo is small and secured. A baby gate blocked access to the bedroom and the bathroom. I had no furniture with space underneath. I moved all the couches just in case, but found nothing. He couldn't fit behind the bookshelves or the entertainment center, but I checked anyway. Dave was gone. Completely and impossibly gone. I spun around in the middle of the room, my heart racing. "Is this it?" I whispered. "Is it happening?" But still, silence. Then my eyes locked onto something. The frosted glass of my closed pantry door. The light inside was off, as it should be. The door was tightly closed and latched. But I walked slowly towards it. I turned the knob, slightly inched it open, and there he was, lying on the floor staring up at me. My little Davy. The pantry was closed the whole time. That door latches shut, and he's way too small to open it himself. There was no way that he could have gotten inside, yet, somehow, he was in there, just waiting for me to find him. Was this a message from my mom, or a glitch in reality? For some context, my mom passed away 2 years ago. She adored jewelry. She had costume pieces, sterling silver, vintage treasures, heirlooms, and a few expensive pieces as well. She wasn't wealthy, but she loved collecting jewelry, and everyone always gifted it to her. In her will, she left it all to me, with instructions to share it with my 2 sisters-in-law. A few days ago marked exactly 2 years ago since she passed. I decided it was finally time to sort through her jewelry and divide it into 3 parts, one for me and one for each of my sisters-in-law. The chest had been sitting in my attic. I had gone through it countless times over the last 2 years, and I knew every single piece. I had been playing with my mom's jewelry since childhood. One of the special items was a pair of handmade silver earrings. My auntie, who is my mom's little sister, and her soulmate/best friend, bought them for her. She gifted them to my mom on a trip to York just months before she passed. My auntie is a jeweler, so these were extra special. My sisters-in-law and I had already agreed we would gift the earrings back to my auntie. They were stored inside a black box, which was inside a gift bag with the jeweler's logo on it. I had looked at them so many times over the years. The day that I finally decided to properly sort everything, I reached for the earring gift bag, and inside was something that had never been there before. A small, old, handwritten letter, opened and addressed to my mom. I recognized it instantly. It was a letter from my auntie to my mom, written in 1997. I swear, on everything that's holy and sacred to others, that letter was never in that bag before. I was the one who collected all of my mom's jewelry from her home. I was the one who bagged and boxed everything, and I had gone through it hundreds of times. That letter came out of nowhere, and when I told my auntie, it freaked her out too. Did the letter somehow manifest itself at the perfect time? Was it a message from my mom? Or did I just experience a glitch in reality? Either way, it left both me and my auntie completely shaken. How did I lose an hour out of the day? I teach first aid classes, and my schedule is down to a science. Each topic has a set amount of time, and I track it carefully to stay on schedule. The class runs from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., but I aim to finish at 4 so students have time to take their exam and so I don't stay too late. Throughout the day, I was ahead of schedule. I checked my lesson plan multiple times, pacing myself exactly as I always do. By the time I reached the last topic, I felt good. I was at 3:30 p.m., giving me a full half hour to review before the exam. Then something impossible happened. I finished the last section and confidently told the class that it was time for review, but they looked confused. One student spoke up and said, "Can we just start the exam now? It's 4:30. I laughed, thinking it was a joke. I had just checked the time and it was 3:30. But then I looked at the classroom clock. 4:30 it says. I checked my wristwatch. 4:30. I even pulled out my phone and saw 4:30. I had somehow lost an entire hour. I didn't add anything extra to the lesson. I didn't slow down. I had been watching the clock the whole time. How did an hour just disappear? I played it cool. I handed out the exams and I let the class finish. But inside, I was completely freaked out. I've been teaching these classes for 5 years, and this has never happened before. I know exactly how long each section takes. So how did I lose an entire hour without noticing? A small thud woke me up, and then something impossible happened. 2 Christmases ago, my niece gave me a keychain as a gift. About a year later, I took my car in for servicing. When I got it back, I noticed the keychain was missing. I wondered if maybe someone had stolen it, but I had no proof. That was 8 months ago. This past Tuesday night, something woke me up. I heard a small thud near my head, kind of like something had fallen. I sat up quickly, and suddenly, my legs started to feel weird. They weren't physically moving, but it felt like my shin bones were shifting inside of me. I stood up, I turned on the lights and TV, and eventually went back to sleep. The next morning, I woke up and looked at my nightstand, and sitting right on top of my wallet was the missing keychain. I haven't seen it in over 8 months. I have no idea where it was that whole time, and I have no explanation for how it ended up back in my room. I feel creeped out just thinking about it. Was this a glitch in the Matrix or something else? Any possible explanations are welcome. A vanishing set of keys, missing money, and an unsolvable mystery. A few years ago, I had a roommate who was borrowing my car to drive for Lyft so I could get a referral bonus. We were sharing car time, but it started to cause some tension. At the same time, I was struggling with addiction, and he had a new partner that he was spending more time with. I felt excluded and frustrated that his time with the car wasn't being used responsibly, and the referral was never met because of an argument that we had. One night, I brought up my concerns. He wasn't tracking his hours on the Lyft app. He returned the car late after I asked for it back at a certain time, and I was ill and needed rest, but he ignored that and woke me up for an emotionally heavy conversation. At the end of the argument, I asked for my keys back, and that's when he announced that he was moving out, immediately. And he did. The next morning, I went to retrieve my spare keys from the top of my Party Favor savings box. The spare keys were there. The money inside the box was gone, though. Also, my regular keys were missing. I searched everywhere. My coat pockets, my shoes, my pants. I even checked inside my boots because they had fallen in there once before, but nothing. I immediately assumed that he had taken the money and stolen my keys just to, to mess with me. I called and texted him, but he denied everything. A few months later, I moved out of that apartment. While packing, I searched again, but found no keys. At my next apartment, where I lived for over a year and a half, mind you, I went through multiple coat seasons wearing the jackets where I thought the keys might be. Then last year, I moved again. Still no keys. Then, not long ago, I was going through my closet looking for a light spring jacket. I shifted one of my coats, which is a floor-length wool dress coat with small, shallow pockets, and I felt something inside. I reached in, and I pulled out my missing keys. How is this possible? I've worn this coat for years. The pockets are too small to hold the keys without me noticing, and we have no mutual friends who could have slipped them back in. There really is no logical explanation. I know these keys were gone, so where have they been for years? Unless, of course, they were never really lost at all. Maybe they just left this reality and simply came back. Now, if only that missing money would reappear the same way. If your favorite soda is Dr. Pepper, then you and I are now friends. I was in the middle of packing my guest bedroom for an upcoming move when I walked into the kitchen for a drink. On the counter, I noticed the Dr. Pepper that I had left there earlier. It was in one of those massive takeout cups, way too big to miss. But since I was super thirsty, I opted for water instead. I poured a glass of water, I sat it down next to the Dr. Pepper on the kitchen island, and then I went back to packing. About 20 minutes later, I came back for another sip, but both drinks were gone. The counter looked normal, as if I had never even placed them there. I was home alone, so nobody else could have moved them. I even checked the fridge, they weren't there. And I also checked the bedroom that I was working in. No drinks there either. At this point, I'm completely confused. So, I go on a mission. I walked through the entire house looking for my missing drinks. I looped back through the kitchen on my way to the bedroom, and that's when I saw them. Both the Dr. Pepper and my glass of water were sitting exactly where I had left them. I stood there for a full minute, just kind of staring and processing. Did I imagine everything? Do I have a gas leak? Did I just experience a real glitch in reality? I even searched the house to make sure that nobody was messing with me, and sure enough, I definitely was home alone. I have no explanation for what happened, but in all honesty, I'm just grateful that whatever creature or alternate reality or glitch in the Matrix decided to give me my drinks back, because I was moving and I only had one glass left. Ghost cat or glitch in the Matrix? A few days ago, something happened that I still can't explain. I was home alone, relaxing on the couch, watching YouTube with our 3 cats. One cat was curled up at my feet, and the other 2 were lounging on the cat tree beside me. Then, one of them jumped down and ran toward the front door. I paused my video, I got up, and I let him outside. Since I was already up, I decided to make some coffee. I walked into the kitchen, I filled up the coffee maker with water, and I started loading the filter. And that's when I saw it. From the corner of my eye, a cat ran past me, heading straight for the front door. I saw it move. I heard the soft, tippy taps of paws on the floor. Thinking that it was one of the other 2 cats, I immediately turned around and went to let them out. But when I reached the hallway, no cat. I looked toward the living room, and both cats were exactly where they had been before. They hadn't moved an inch. Was this a glitch in reality? I know what I saw, I know what I heard, but there was no actual cat. So what just happened? I'll probably never know. Duplication glitch. I just had a baby, and she only likes this one specific kind of pacifier, the Soothie brand. They're the round, rubbery ones with a hole in the middle. Before she was born, I boiled all the pacifiers from my bag that my cousin gave us. There were 2 green Soothies and 1 blue Soothie. That's it. After coming home, we quickly realized that she wouldn't take anything else, so I triple-checked the bag. Still, only 3 Soothies. A few weeks later, we bought a 2-pack of new Soothies, 1 pink one and 1 purple one. For over a month, we had exactly 5 pacifiers total, the 2 new ones plus our original 3. Then, one day, we were heading out and needed to grab one. On my nightstand, there were 2 Soothies, 1 green, 1 blue. I picked up the green one and I walked it into the living room. My husband was packing the diaper bag and had just put a blue Soothie inside. And that's when my brain froze. Wait, I left the blue one in the bedroom, but my husband also has the blue one in the living room. That's impossible. I went back to check, and sure enough, there was still a blue Soothie on my nightstand, and another blue Soothie in my husband's hand. There's never been a second blue Soothie. I never bought another one. My husband swears that he didn't either, and my mom never brought any extras from her house. I'm a major germaphobe, so when we're out, the pacifiers are either in my baby's mouth or in the diaper bag, never just laying around. So where did this come from? Because I know for a fact that we only ever had 1 blue Soothie pacifier. I left my apartment for 1 hour, and when I returned, it was infested. When I was living alone in a small apartment, nothing ever seemed out of the ordinary. It was one room with one attached bathroom. I always kept it clean, there were no bugs, no issues, and only I had access. There were never any roommates, no frequent visitors, and every night I had the same routine. I'd head out for dinner at about 8:30, and then I'd come back about an hour later, close to 9:45. One rainy evening, I followed my usual schedule. When I left, my room was completely normal. And when I came back, well, that's a different story. The moment I unlocked the door, I froze in horror. My entire room was infested. Cockroaches, bugs everywhere, crawling on the walls, all over the floor, and the ceiling. I'm talking hundreds, probably close to 300 roaches. I hate bugs, and my room had never had an issue before, yet somehow, in just 1 hour, it had turned into a horror movie. I couldn't sleep there, so I called a friend and crashed at his place. I locked the room behind me, with the bugs still inside, and then the next morning I came back, bracing myself for another nightmare. But when I opened the door, not a single bug remained. No cockroaches, no other bugs, nothing. It was almost as if the infestation had never happened. I asked the building's sweeper if they had cleaned my room overnight, but they denied ever entering, and nobody else had a key. It was like reality really did glitch, and my room had been reset. When I told my friend, he had two theories. One, black magic. Somebody cast a curse. And two, a paranormal presence. He said the room might be haunted, but I don't know. I don't know what to believe, but this is something that I will never forget. So, what do you think happened? Something impossible happened, and my dog noticed it too. I had just gotten home and was greeting my dog when I noticed his bone lying squarely in the middle of the couch. As I walked toward it, my dog jumped onto the couch, but then I heard a sudden thunk from across the room near his crate about 6 feet away. I turned my head and I saw a bone on the floor. At first, I assumed it had just been sitting on top of the crate and somehow fell off, but as I took a closer look, it was the exact same bone from the couch. The timing was impossible. The instant I looked away, it appeared across the room. No bouncing, no rolling. It was just a simple drop. If it had been thrown or knocked or even bounced off the couch, I would have heard some clattering, but this was just a quiet thunk. Even my dog was confused. He immediately started looking for the bone, but he searched on the couch where it had just been. He was genuinely confused that it wasn't there, and I had to point it out to him that it was near his crate before he finally went to grab it. I'm not saying there's no logical explanation here, but the details just don't add up. If it fell, how did it move 6 feet? And if it was launched off the couch, why was there no sound of it rolling? And why did my dog seem just as confused as I was? Did something stop me from getting arrested that night? This happened 8 or maybe 9 years ago, and I still lose sleep over it. I wish that I could reason it away, but I don't think that's possible. My boyfriend and I planned to camp in a hammock in the woods at night. It was a protected wildlife area, and though we technically weren't supposed to be there overnight, my friends and I did it all the time. I picked him up late at night, but as he was leaving his house, he accidentally locked himself out. He wouldn't be able to get back in until morning. And that's when something weird happened. A black cat ran halfway across the street, stopped, then turned around and ran away. Something about it freaked me out. I told him I didn't feel right about going to the woods anymore. Earlier that day, we had stuffed a stack of 4 plastic chairs into my car. Since they were so big, we had to fold down the seats to fit them, and that squished the hammock and the blankets that we had planned to use later. Because he was locked out, I had to sneak him into my room through the window. We never left the house after that. I was so paranoid about getting caught sneaking around that I wouldn't even let him use the bathroom. I mean, I literally made him pee in something so he wouldn't have to walk around the house. We just watched TV and fell asleep. The next morning, my mom left for work, but then she suddenly came back furious. She dropped my hammock and blankets in the hallway and yelled at me for leaving them down the road. I was completely confused. She told me that she had found them at the lake, a beach across the street from our house. But here's the problem. I never go to that lake. At first, I thought that someone might have broken into my car overnight and stole them and then just ditched all the junk down the road. But the car was still locked. The plastic chairs were still inside, the seats were still folded down, the keys were still in my room, and there were no signs of a break-in. This means that somebody would have had to unlock the car without triggering the alarm, which was parked right next to my window, remove the stack of chairs and pull up the seats to get to the items, take the hammock and the blankets out, put the seats back down, restack the chairs and close the car, all without making a sound. It would have been physically impossible for someone to do all of that without waking me up. But then I remembered the black cat and what I found out later. A friend of mine had gotten arrested at the same woods that we had planned to go to that night. Apparently, cops had been monitoring the area, and when they caught my friend, they showed him a picture of my car and asked who I was in exchange for a lesser charge. If we had been gone that night, we would have been arrested for trespassing. I can't shake the feeling that this is all somehow connected. Also, one last mystery here. Even if I somehow left my hammock and my blankets at the lake, how did I completely forget it? I have no memory of going there. I have no memory of taking everything out of my car, and no memory of leaving it all behind. But the strangest part is this: the fabric was completely dry. I mean, there was no dirt or even dew on them, even though they were supposedly outside all night. And the hammock was still neatly tucked into its bag, as if it had never been used. I don't believe in ghosts or alternate realities, but man, I can't explain what happened. It's been years, and I still have no idea how my stuff disappeared from my car and ended up at a place that I never go, only to be found completely clean and untouched the next morning. The weather lately feels wrong. Tell me it's not just me. For years, I've had a running joke at my office. It always rains on Tuesdays, and strangely enough, it often did. Every time the rain started, my coworkers would laugh and tease me, saying that they hoped for it just to keep the tradition alive. Something about Tuesdays and rain just kind of felt right. When it was sunny on a Tuesday, the day felt, I don't know, wrong, almost like something was out of place. Recently, though, I've noticed something strange. The rain has shifted. Now, instead of Tuesdays, it's happening more often on Wednesdays. I can't pinpoint exactly when it started, but I have this gut feeling that it happened around the time of the eclipse. It sounds ridiculous, I know. Weather is unpredictable, but this feels different. Something about this world feels off-kilter, and I can't shake the feeling that something's shifted. And this isn't the only thing that feels strange either. Lately, I've been noticing subtle shifts in other ways. Energetically, things just feel different. Even my own voice has sounded different to me, as if I've somehow changed in ways that I can't really explain. I know this isn't about parallel universes or anything like that, but I can't ignore how unsettling these small shifts have been. Has anyone else ever felt something like this?